have so no.
And it's 6:30. We'll call the Monday, October 24th City Council meeting to order. If we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, do we have any additions to the agenda tonight?
We do not, Mayor?
All right, and I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion.
Second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. That will take us to public comments. If there's anyone who would like to discuss anything that is not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close public comments and we will move to consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that needs to be pulled for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Then that will take us to our business items. Number 8, consider the approval of purchase agreement and addendum for the 400 Ash Avenue North.
So in front of you, you have the purchase agreement for the old fire station between the city and Brad Quas. And this hasn't changed any. This was the original document. I don't know if you guys saw this before, but the purchase price is what it was before, $385,000. And we have an addendum with this because the purchase agreement was done on a template document by Mr. Quas, and then he sent it over to us after he had typed it on a typewriter. And so we don't have an editable Word copy in order to make live changes to. So with that, you have the original, and then you have the addendum on the last page, which would be the changes that, as approved, would go into effect. And some of these, the first four are from Tim Sullivan that were originally supposed to go in for line 19, removing all language to no survey is needed. Line 35, updating that closing date to November 30th, 2023, because the original closing date was January 1st, 2023. So this will give us additional time to make sure we can get the Public Works building going and up. And we can figure out where the sheriff's office is supposed to go. And this just gives us more planning time rather than closing and then having to lease or rent back from Mr. Quas. And Brad has been excellent to work with on this. I want to thank him quite a bit for his flexibility. He's been fine with all this. And so that's been really good. So this will get us the appropriate time we need to sort the other things out so we're not scrambling to find home for things here in the near future. And simple to the extent allowed by law for indemnity clauses and things of that nature. And then just cleaning up the language for line 360 on clarifying it to the C2 Central Business District for that.
Any questions?
Didn't we rezone it?
Yes. Well, it's in the process of being rezoned. So we have made the approvals. It's now off to Met Council for review. I don't see why they would, and John agrees, why they would push back on it. It's a pretty slam dunk rezone. So once Met Council approves it, then it'll go in the paper for publication, and then we'll have ourselves a full rezone.
But it says the buyer is rezoning. That's what line 360 is. Sorry. Sale of the property is contingent upon buyer rezoning property to C2 Central Business.
Yes, so the buyer would petition us to have it rezoned. We actually do the rezoning, but the buyer petitions us to have it rezoned. So the seller, that would be us, we don't initiate that rezone. He applied for the rezone.
Okay, so this is just getting it to what we've already done.
Yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll look for a motion to approve the city to sign the addendum to the purchase agreement along with the purchase agreement for 400 Ash Avenue.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. That will take us to city council reports. Councilmember Melender, anything to report on?
Nothing.
Councilmember Halt, anything to report on?
Nope.
Councilmember McNeely
Nope.
and Councilmember Wagner.
Nope.
And I do not believe I have anything either, as I don't think we've had a meeting since our last one. So I have nothing else to report on. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Motion a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Give you the record.
Got close. With that, then we'll just jump right into the workshop. Nick, if you're ready to go with that, we'll call our order and start with number 2, discussion on Nick Drew property.
So this was brought up at the last council meeting. Chad had mentioned the possibility, I think it had been mentioned before, even about the potential of purchasing the Nick Drew property, just the single parcel itself. So at the last meeting, we said we'd bring it to a workshop, and so here we are at the workshop.
All right. So with that, any thoughts on it? Chad, you want to start with anything or?
Well, I believe Trumpy Homes owns the land to the east, if I'm not mistaken. And maybe we could use it,
Give me a second. You can keep talking,
maybe we could use it as a through street or a future park for said development. I'm not really sure how that would fit in exactly, but I future potential there's a few items, like I said, the through street or a park, but beyond that, I'm not seeing a whole ton of use at this time.
I'm not interested in spending city funds on this property when we don't even know what the future holds for that property that could be developed at who knows when. It could be 5-10 years, and I just don't think that it's feasible, because even if you use it as a possible through street, we don't know what's happening with 62nd Street, so we couldn't have people even using that to get to the development. So I feel it's just a premature thing to resolve a personal property owner's issue.
Yeah, and I see I see that point. I'm torn on it. I initially thought it wouldn't be a bad idea. It's green space. It's a full acre. I think it'd be a great location for a dog park or the archery if we didn't, if we ended up keeping it. But I do see my main struggle that I keep coming back to is that we have our ordinances as city that anyone in the city has to have water and sewer, but we can't get it there. I mean, it just fundamentally doesn't seem right to me.
I would agree with that.
So I have a problem with that. And I know it's unique. I don't think we have any other property in the city that has this case. So it's unique. So I think for that reason, that's where I started thinking, do we have some responsibility to do something? But I go back and forth on it, Nick, because I see your point.
I don't think so. I think that this decision was made to help this homeowner in previous things, and that's why they were brought into the city and the lot was subdivided. And unfortunately, now we're dealing with that, and I don't think we need to make any changes just for one property. That I think is just going to add more issues down the road if we purchase it, because then what do we do? Like, okay, well, now we don't need it. So we just spent this much money of taxpayers' dollar for a piece of property we can't even access, because we can't even use 62nd Street to go. There is no public route to this property. And, like a dog park, like, well, how are they gonna get there? Fly, drop in on a helicopter? I mean,
Right.
they can't use 62nd Street. That's a private road.
That's a good point.
You're right.
So I know that it's a bigger issue, but again, this is one reason why when the decision was made back in whatever 2012, nobody really thought about all the negatives or things that this could cause later down the road. And here we are later down the road and we've got an issue. And a homeowner, like if the homeowner, there wasn't issues with that homeowner, this probably wouldn't have ever been
Right.
brought up either.
Right.
Mhm.
So I don't feel that's our responsibility to try to figure out what to do with something when we don't even know what we could do with it.
Yeah,
Based
all
on the
valid point-
location.
I mean, valid points. Like I said,
So I feel like I'm done talking about this property.
I tend to go back and forth on it, but I think the value of it will always be there. I mean, I don't think it's a losing proposition for the city by any means. Land's not going down.
No, but it's an island. We'd be buying an island. To sit on what for 10, 15 years that who knows what would even happen. That other property behind it would have to get developed for us to even access it if if we are not able to annex in 62nd Street. We can't create a throughway from Ridge Road because that's all private property. Yes, we have an easement, but it's not enough easement for a road
Right.
or a path.
Well, plus who would want that running right between you?
Well, I wouldn't if
Right.
I lived there. That easement is more for utilities underground, not for
Yeah.
an above ground thing.
So
We'd have to look at the utility, we'd have to look at the easement. It says what it is for specifically.
Right.
If it doesn't specify roadway, if it just says it's for sewer or sewer and water or whatever it specifies, if it doesn't specify roadway,
once upon a time, there was a road there. I mean, it was gravel, but once upon a time, there was.
Right. And maybe it is, but I still don't think that's a responsible throughway to a 1 acre piece of property that is an island.
So now, like, if somebody would buy the Drew property and, let's say both Drew properties, would they be able to, like, even construct like a pole shed or anything on that piece of
No,
property?
because it's within city limits. They'd have to.
Need a house first. Yeah.
Wow.
and I guess speaking without having fully read the zoning ordinance or just going off of what my experience has been elsewhere, when you have a buildable parcel by itself, generally speaking, you don't put accessory structures on it without a principal structure on it first, and a principal structure being a residence.
I just wasn't sure
Yeah.
since they're kind of tied together, but they're not,
Now, if there was a way for him to combine the parcels, yeah, you could put a pole shed on there because now it's one parcel and you, And
But
then the
don't we
house-
have an ordinance for shed size? And I would
And-
think that would be the same as all within city limits.
yeah, but
and
it
then
also goes by
that would
ground
that would
coverage
then come
too.
into play, certainly. But
Yes.
combining it would then at least allow for the possibility of it, but it still maybe be restricted by the sizes of accessory buildings.
But he'd have to go through the county and stuff to combine the lots.
Yeah, that'd
And-
be, go through the county to combine them.
Again, it was divided for whatever reason, and here we are.
He'd be better off putting it
With an
back
issue.
together so that at least you could do something like that, a hobbyist or, potentially something.
Larry, any thoughts on it?
No, I think once it's annexed, that the whole property be either part of it or all of it back together will be very valuable to somebody.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think it's got to be annexed in before that would happen. And I think
Unfortunately.
that's probably our next move.
I just don't like the feel of the rush, right? Like it's one thing if we sit down and we plan for it and we budget for it, and we decide that's what we want to do, but we're here trying to solve a problem for one resident. That, I feel bad for him, but I am with
Right.
Nikki. I just don't think it's worth.
But to Mike's point too,
I mean, that's what we're having a conversation, right?
right, but to
And I
Mike,
do see Mike's point.
absolutely. See, that's where I'm struggling is like, it is a buildable property and we can't
But
supply what's needed is where I'm struggling.
And that should have been discussed when these properties were brought in.
Mhm.
And I know that we have to deal with it now, but it's one piece. I mean, if we were talking about a whole load of things and we
Right.
can make an adjustment, but I don't think I get where you're coming from, but I also just, I don't think that yes, we have a piece of property that we can't build on. Well, that's unfortunate and it's not really,
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you, Nikki.
no, I'm not. I'm not trying to be cold hearted, but I just feel like it was, when you look at the big picture, it's just not anything feasible to do
Right.
now. Now, fast forward a year from now, could be a completely different conversation based on what has progressed with fixing the other issues at hand that we're going to be having conversations about. And it's not an issue, but just how do we incorporate that to make this a one whole livable
Then
environment?
We might want it at that point.
Yeah, and
Maybe
then
you
then
can
maybe
figure out
it's
maybe-
different,
Mhm.
a different situation, but I can't
Right.
predict that future right now.
Yeah.
And I
I
don't
think that's a great point.
want to do that to further complicate this situation. Well, okay, now the city owns it. Okay. Well, then now what? There's no harm in us not owning it right now.
So it sounds like this is more of a question of ripeness of the subject. Ripeness being, it's a legal term that if something is not ripe yet, it hasn't come to the point where it needs to be dealt with at a legal level. Use it in this sense to where we're premature in talking about this. It's good to bring it up and to have this discussion, but it sounds like the consensus is this is a next year problem. Actually, it comes down to this is a problem that then gets dealt with. Should annexation be a thing? Should there be a public access road where 62nd becomes? And that's all up in the air, of course. But when that's more finalized, then the Drew property becomes a discussion point.
Well, and at that time, then they should have city sewer and water, and then, right, the
Have it
city
then.
doesn't, I mean, if they want to consider it, they can,
Right.
but we're not
Right.
an only option.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think it's forever. This property isn't going to be usable. I think it's just a short term, but I like Peggy said, is I don't want to be rushed into making a decision based on circumstances that are outside of our control.
Nope, I think that's good discussion. All right, anything more on that? We'll move on to golf carts?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So in the packet, I'd put together a memorandum for you guys, just going over golf carts and how they're regulated in the state of Minnesota, and then just a basic overview of if they were something we were to consider, what would that look like? What are considerations we can go over? And just begin talking about if that's a direction we want to look at. So the background in state law is the statute is 169.045 specifically on that. But then there are some others that play into it. And by default, golf carts are not allowed on any road in the state of Minnesota. The only way you can have golf carts on city streets or county or township roads is that that jurisdiction has to enact an ordinance that allows them to be on the roads. So if that isn't done, then they can't be on there. So it's a little bit of a reverse. Usually things are allowed, but then cities will ban them to be on there. And this is a circumstance where the reverse happens, where they're banned until we allow them, if we allow them.
So do we have flexibility? So if we do allow them, do we have to follow those bullet points? Or do we have flexibility to set it, if we determine we want to allow it, we have flexibility to set it however we want? Is that
For-
true?
There is some flexibility. The times of operation, sunrise and sunset, and equipped with original, that is in the state law. So that's why I'm glad we had the links here. So we'll bring it up here. Oop. So pulled right from state law on this, where you can see times of operation. It says motorized golf carts, all-terrain vehicles, and utility task vehicles may only be operated on designated roadways from sunrise to sunset unless equipped with original equipment, headlights, taillights, and rear-facing lights. They shall not be operated in inclement weather. You can go over that, and they have to be up to 500 feet in that. But a lot of the ordinances that I've dealt with and then even looked at leading up to this of other towns, they generally limit to sunrise and sunset. I think it's just generally accepted you don't want golf carts running around at night for obvious reasons. So that's where that comes into play, the sunrise and sunset. Otherwise, the operation of inclement weather, that was spelled out right in state law, so that's not something that's not negotiable. But they do have to have a slow-moving emblem. They cannot be driven on a highway, but then they are allowed to cross a highway to get to two transversable roadways that are allowed. So if you want to get from one side of town to the other, you can go across the highway, but you can't go down the highway. They have to have a rear view mirror, and then they have to comply with insurance requirements. So there are a few things on the bullet point list here that just looking in other ordinances and looking at things that we have flexibility on, some of those are requiring a permit holder to have a driver's license. That's not a requirement that's in state law, but a lot of them tend to. The minimum age you want to have of the permit holder for the golf cart. Some do 18, some don't necessarily do 16. You can determine the length of the permit. Statute allows up to 3 years for a permit to be valid. A lot of them tend to do a year, but we have flexibility there. Restricting the times to strictly sunrise and sunset. I saw a couple examples of ordinances where they said up to a half hour before and after sunrise and sunset, just in case they get caught out and they can get home and things like that. But there wasn't much variation in that. Restricting the dates of use. So it's sunrise to sunset, but I saw examples where they would limit it to generally a thaw to freeze type of cycle between snowfalls. They attempted, it was an April to November or a March to October. Looked like they were trying to hit that non-snow season, so you didn't have golf carts running around in winter. Something to consider there. Requiring of an additional equipment above and beyond minimum requirements. If you want them to have aftermarket type of stuff on there, if that's something you really want to look at. You could also restrict the maximum allowable speed on roadways. So if a golf cart can do 30, you can limit them to 20 and say you can't go faster than that. You can restrict on the roadways that they can specifically be on. Just because you allow them doesn't mean they get free reign over every street. You can say these are the streets that you're allowed to go on, or conversely, you can say these are the streets you can't go on. They're all allowed except for these areas if you had a reason you wanted to restrict it that way.
How about with county roads? Do we have to worry about county roads, or can they go on county roads?
County roads would be dictated by the county ordinance.
We'll have no say in county roads.
Yep. And I would think in our ordinance or in the informational materials we would get about, we would say, this is the county roads that you need to be aware of. And either yes, you can, or no, there is no Carver County allowance for it.
Now, people are probably going to get confused because UTVs, we don't have this strict of rules because they are licensed through the DOT and they follow those guidelines. They can go on county roads. They can't go on highways.
Mhm.
So my only struggle with it is, I like the sunset to sunrise or 30 minutes, because it's still light out 30 minutes after. It's just, we just don't have, it's not anything we really can police at sunrise, we don't have coverage necessarily at sunrise, sunset every day either. And not to say that we need to have it where everybody's doing that would be a little bit of an issue. I'm kind of leaning towards allowing them, but having that, and then it'd be nice to have like a little flyer just created that when someone gets a permit, like here is it's clear and concise, exactly what our rules are, what they have to do, and they just have that.
And that would be in the ordinance that would be crafted, what's allowed, what's not allowed. It would
I know,
be
but
spelled out.
sometimes like
You're talking
people,
like a handout.
like a
Yeah.
handout, like
When
they
you
would
get
get a
your
flyer,
permit,
they'd be
here
like,
you go.
here's your permit and here's your handout. And it would just have to be a one thing purchase, thing, because looking up ordinances on our website
Maybe we could just make
isn't
like a
necessarily easy to do
little laminated card.
and
that we hand
understand
out.
the wording.
Well, and so what they would do their application and assuming they got the permit, we would certainly hand them a copy of the ordinance, but we could also have just the
Well-
frequently asked questions or the condensed.
Yeah, I would like a simple, like, whatever
the
our is, like,
101 version.
yeah, because I read ordinances and I'm like, I get what that means, but I also don't get what that means. Because even if you read our ordinance now, it really doesn't say it limits golf carts. So I would like on the application, you could do it on the application where it said, like, let's say our rules were sunset, sunrise, must have must be, 21 to have the permit, but anyone with a driver's license can drive it.
Mhm.
So it's just very clear, like, it has to have brake,
Yeah,
can't
that's
go on the
great.
state highways, even though that's not an ordinance thing, but just so they understand what it means. We have to educate people, and that means they're not allowed on 25.
A nice double-sided pamphlet that here are the rules and regulations.
Yeah,
In
make it
plain
s-
language, not
yeah.
legalese like an ordinance.
Right. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
And I'm fine starting to move forward. I'm still up in the air if I want to have golf carts or not, but I'm fine with moving forward if you want to start putting some stuff together and
Yeah.
And go from there. And did you say you did get the petition?
Yeah,
With
Kat
names?
did send me an updated one.
Is it worth reaching out and getting them involved? Anyone who signed or Cat to kind of get some feedback, what they would want to, I've never owned a golf cart, so I don't, or do we not involve them?
I think we should involve them.
I do too.
I think it's important.
think it's
We don't have a lot of community involvement unless it's, of course, like these, not controversial, but like the things that like people really care about when we have meetings.
When we did chicken,
Passionate
when we
Passionate.
did chicken ordinance, we had residents come in and the people who wanted it.
Right. And
they
then
really
if people
helped with
can
it,
come in
so-
that are against it, because it's always good to hear what other people are concerned about or what they're seeing.
Mhm.
I mean,
We have had a few people.
I was gonna say. we-
Yeah, and I
a few
think-
emails.
I think that those people should be notified that we'll be having a discussion and that we encourage them to come, because it is always good to hear the other side of what other people are seeing or concerns that other people have,
Mhm.
because I think that's helps us make better decisions.
I think if you look, see what Victoria's done, see what NYA's done. Like I said, it sounds like you've reached out to Brad from the sheriff's department to kind of get their thoughts on it. And then let's start putting something together.
Sure.
I think we have time now.
Yeah.
Season's just about over.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if this goes into next year, obviously,
Right.
that'll give us a little time to get something set.
Yep, we can do a
So
couple
we're ready by April.
more workshops on it,
Yeah.
get a draft ordinance together, see what they're looking like. And certainly reach out to Kat and let her know when the next workshop is, put it on our social media.
I'd like to get
Inviting
some
the public.
feedback from people who are operating them and see what they,
Yeah.
I just think we should out of courtesy.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we're not in a rush on this.
Right, right.
Well,
It's kind of outside of golf cart season.
well, that's what you're saying. If we can get something done over the winter so that we're set for April to maybe institute it, that'd be the way I'd go.
All right. Sounds good. Then we'll move on to the credit card policy update.
Oh, I forgot to say that I like the Lakefield permit because it listed, it was very clear.
Oh, one more question. Would we make them get their own slow moving signs, or would that be something we would offer along with the permit for them to purchase?
So they would do it.
Typically, they have to get the
Okay.
slow moving. We provide the sticker and that's just so when police roll by, they go, oh, it's got a sticker on it, it's permitted.
Okay.
But so the slow moving and the bare minimum is the slow moving sign and then the rear view mirror they have to have as far as equipment goes.
And maybe just some thoughts too, if there's any signs that we need to update, including, motorized vehicles, including golf carts or things we might have to put in parks or things like that. Maybe just make some mental notes.
Yeah, how was
Any
it?
signage.
Yeah, no
that-
parks. I don't want them on trails.
Well, and they're already no motor.
Yeah.
I can't go.
Well, that.
Put it in the guide you give them.
Regulations.
They're not allowed in parks. They're not
It
allowed.
might be worth updating some of those, make them a little more clear also as we start adding these, but just something to think about.
Yep.
All right, credit card.
So our credit card policy dates back to 2005, and for the most part, it's in pretty good shape. Looking to update that, and I got the two examples. So the one I have in there is the one I updated for Fairfax when I was there. So the big thing is we currently have the card through Alliance Bank, and it's through a third party, and we can get the same business type of card to use for credit card purchases, but through Security Bank and Trust in town. And that would be a far more streamlined, because then it's debited directly out of our accounts. It shows up on the bank the bank statements, so that we can see exactly, rather than having a credit card statement here with the bank reconciliation that just says Visa purchase, Visa purchase. We can then go streamline that, so we're not having to tie the two out. It's right in there. Let's see, you get the same security that you do through Security Bank and Trust that you do with the Alliance Bank credit card. So it's streamline that, take out one more thing that needs to be done on the administrative end to streamline that. And then the key change is in the policy itself. Right now in the policy, it says exactly who can just who can use the credit card. But the age of the policy was from a time when they were newer, cities were using them, so city councils were very skittish about necessarily handing over control to administration to make those calls. They wanted to make sure that they had it all spelled out and what have you, so there wasn't any people using it that shouldn't be using it. Well, over time, as credit cards became more ubiquitous in use, that started to relax and the policy started to change more. Well, just have the city administrator administer the credit card. So if, let's say, we have a parks person in the summertime and they need to go down someplace to pick up something at Mayor Lumber or something like that. In the current policy, they're not allowed to use the credit card. So Kyle would have to come in, or Brian would have to come in, go get it for them. Whereas if the authority is with the city administrator, then I could sit there, hear what they want to purchase, and I go, yep, that's a valid purchase, just go get it. So you don't have to involve other parties getting involved on it. And then it also expands the allowable expenses. Again, dating back, they really restricted what the use is for because they didn't want it to become this pocket of money that staff just went hog wild spending on it. They just thought it was this extra pot of money they could draw from. And that's not what it is at all. It's supplanting the PO invoice, paper check stuff that you can just easily do with a credit card. And more things are becoming credit card only that you have to purchase through. So it just expands that list to be more in line with what's going on now. And the way the process would work is this would be the report at the end of the month where we'd have all invoices attached. They have to be clear. We don't accept statements. We don't accept just things that aren't clear. It has to be very specific. This is what it was for. Here's when it was purchased. It has to be tied back like you would do any other invoice that the city pays currently through a check. Those all have to be turned into City Hall, whoever uses the card to purchase so that we can tie them out. The date, the description, the amount, and the account number it goes to. So very clear in there where it was and where it came from. And then any purchase request, we would just get one card for use. I would hold that card up at the city office, and then any employee who wanted to use it for use would just ask me what the purchase is going to be for, so that it gets vetted through an administrative process. So it's not that I distrust any of my staff at all, that they're making poor decisions on it, but it's a check and balance to make sure that you have internal controls on the use of such an item. So all purchases would have to at least be cleared by me. Kyle comes in and say, hey, Nick, I got to go down here and pick up this, or I got to order this part online because we had something break at the sewer plant. And this is the only place I can get it through with a credit card. Sure, fine, go ahead and order it.
That would still be limited to your spending amount, correct?
Yes.
That's $5,000.
Yep.
So what if you're on vacation?
Give me a call. Text me.
Credit card's just gonna sit in a drawer?
Yep. That's what it does now.
Who does Kyle have his own? So he just goes to Mayor Lumber or gas station and gets what he needs.
Yeah, right now there were 3 credit cards.
And are they in specific people's names?
Mhm.
And who has them?
Kyle, Janelle, and Maggie had one. I don't have one in my name because I haven't issued one.
And so would this be a credit card or a debit card?
It would have credit card capabilities, but it would debit directly from the account. So we wouldn't have to send a payment to Visa or Alliance Bank it would debit out immediately.
Would it debit at the time you use it or on a monthly basis? Like it's due on the 10th of every month and they just take it on the 10th, or it's going to be a transactional basis?
It would be on the transactional basis on the date.
And can you go back to where you talked about it was more clear than a statement instead of just a Visa?
So on the bank statement, the transaction would just show up, it'd show the vendors and all that. Whereas now it just comes off as a Visa payment.
It's like a check payment.
But then you have the credit card over here, and now you're tying this to this.
You'll
So we-
actually see the
This to this.
detailed,
So if we didn't pay on time, like with credit cards, if we didn't pay on time, we pay interest.
Right.
This would eliminate interest
or
because,
any late payments.
or any
on it.
late payments.
Yep, that too. You don't have to worry
Did your
about
other, you did this process, not for fraud purposes, that's your only out. Like what if the card gets stolen and, our checking account is probably higher than a lot of personal checking accounts and we get wiped out. But I guess it could happen in any situation anyway.
But a
but-
credit card, you're not responsible for that.
And Security Bank and Trust does have fraud protection measures.
And they probably have their own credit cards too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, that's what I would, but that doesn't alleviate the administrative piece.
Have you talked to Kyle and Janelle about the new process, if that would be something that would be feasible? I'm thinking more of Kyle's aspect of just having to come, not that he didn't ask for approval before, but has to come get the card and then go to the store. Does that, I'm just asking, it might not be an issue where he's like, oh yeah, I'm in City Hall every day. So it's just a little bit more pre-planning on my part instead of me just being like, oh crap, I need this. So I'm just going to go get it. And I know I don't know how every purchase was approved.
So,
Like I need duct tape, or
yeah, so he would have his card and he'd just go get it. And there would just be a slight amount more of pre-planning involved. Where you just come and ask and, the vast majority of the time, they're 99 to 100% of the time, it's going to be legitimate requests. So they come and ask for it. Kyle says, well, tomorrow I got to run here and go get this with the credit card. Or if it's just an oops last minute thing, which in my time in Fairfax and even Canby was really rare because that was in Canby and Fairfax where I spent 11 of my 12 years. The setup was exactly like this. We had one card. There was never an issue with being able to obtain things. I took a little bit more planning than just being able to grab and go, but it worked out really easily.
So you said the credit card sits in the drawer now. Does that mean Kyle's and Janelle's are sitting in the drawer?
No, they have,
Mine's in a locked cabinet.
Yep.
I'm sure Kyle's
Probably
on
in
his
wallet.
person, yeah. I mean, I like the idea of the individualized line items.
and it shows up right on our bank statement. You see it right on there. So it's
Right.
very easy to tie out.
And I
Um,
can see the ease of use for.
My-
administrative.
my only question, and this is just, I'm open to change. That's not what I'm saying. And I guess I didn't even really know the process. But if you had individual credit cards, you would know who did it. Where like you would know because you'd be saying it, but like what if you're gone and so now it's in a locked box, but you have the key, you're gone. Janelle knows it. I'm not saying any, I'm just saying names. Somebody, oh, I gave it to Kyle, but you don't know whose transaction it actually was. Because
Could there be
before on
sep-
the credit card, you would see what number,
Could there be?
what
separate
card was
payments?
used.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
So how that would reconcile out if there was an unknown purchase, we wouldn't get it. So whoever makes the purchase, that's their responsibility to get us the invoice or get us the detailed receipt of what happened.
And if you had
If we don't get that, let's say let's say I go out and make a purchase. Let's assume that I'm not city administrator, because I don't want to use anybody else's names, but I go out and I just kind of grab the card and I go make a purchase, and I don't ask the city administrator for anything, and I don't never turn in a receipt. Under the policy, I'm personally responsible for that purchase now. If it was a $400 piece of tool, if I didn't turn in a receipt for it, the city's not paying it. I'm personally liable for it, because in the policy, it says the person is personally liable if they're not producing sufficient receipting for it. So when we go to reconcile each month with the credit card expense report, we're gonna have all that listed. We're gonna have all the receipts involved, and we take that, and then we look at our bank statement. We go cross, okay, there it is, to make sure we have all the supporting documents. And we would need the supporting documents when we would have the Alliance Bank card as we do now. We'd see a line item that there was a purchase, but we don't have the receipt for it. Well, somebody did something. We need to find out who.
I don't have any problems with this proposed policy. I think the checks and balances, I think it'll help out even the audit. And you're just gonna have to deal, I mean, if it becomes an issue and they can't get the card, that's just something you're gonna have to work through and make changes to the policy. I mean, I think this is the right way to go. I think it's extra controls.
And if we want to look at getting multiple cards for people again, that's fine too. I'm not opposed to that.
I just wish there was personal pins. See, like with the post office, we have one card for the office and anybody can use it, but you have to have your own personal pin that works with it. And then your name comes up on the statement that you made this purchase X day.
Well, maybe that's something the bank can do. Yeah. I mean, I'm open to the change. I just want to make sure that everybody on the staff side understands, and that it's just a change, and that if we find that it's
Not working.
not an inconvenience, but just causing more whatever, that you would find a solution to whatever that was.
Do you know how many transactions are on the credit card a month on average?
Not very many. It kind of depends. In the summer, I think Kyle probably have quite a bit more because they're running and getting materials or equipment that breaks or blades or that kind of stuff, paint.
Yeah.
And you'll mail something
me
every
is
once in a
just
while, some stamps.
Pretty much office supplies. So,
Right, but you're here and you're just,
right, or like
Yeah.
I'll be picking up stuff for elections. You know.
so just a little bit more planning, but I think it will help with reconciliation for sure. And one less bill that we have to worry about paying.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'd be
You
open.
need help spelling my last name for the card?
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good idea. It helps,
No, we'll just give you the-
it'll help you meet the standard or the statute, whatever the Minnesota statute is, and clean things up. It's a good idea.
Sounds good.
Actually, let's talk about that pin thing you got going on.
I don't know if it's the certain card that we have, because it's not like a regular Visa or MasterCard.
I may be able to ask Security Bank and Trust about it, and they may have a similar functionality that I'm not aware of, because that would make it easy.
Okay.
Post office probably has their own bank.
No. I don't know who it's through.
No, I mean, ask the bank, see what options. I mean, I'm assuming,
Mhm.
you know,
All right, let's move then to preliminary update on the 2023 budget.
So this is just a real high overview. We're not going to go into any budget hard figures or line items or anything like that. Just want to give an update on what I've been working on and where we're at with it. So just to go, an overview of the debt service we currently have. We currently have 8 bonds under repayment status. We have the 2006 Public Facilities Authority loan, and this one I'm sure when it was issued at the time, we knew exactly what the project for, but having only completed 3 weeks, I haven't found the exact projects which the other for, but they're all 100% legitimate because they had to go through a council process in order to be done. So The Public Facilities Authority loan on the water end of thing, I'm sure was for some upgrades that happened in 2005 or 6 that happened there. So you
Just
might,
disappointed you don't know. Kidding.
give me another week. Give me another week.
Kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Then we have the 2014 A bond, which is split roughly between water and general, about 10% and 90% split on the repayment on that. 2015 A bond is a 2080 water to general fund split. The 2017 A1, that one I actually know a little bit more about. It's a refunding bond, which in public sector terms just means refinancing to get a better interest rate, but it was water and sewer at the time. But as the water part is all done, and that was completed, I think, this year. The last payment was for the water. So now the remaining years in that is just sewer in the refunding portion. We had the 2020 Public Facilities Authority loan, and that was all the work that was done to the water treatment plant in 2020. That I know for certain. The 2020 A equipment certificate, that was for a tanker truck for fire. That one I know. The 2021 A bond out of the general fund, that is the fire hall. And the 2021 B bond, I think that's Fifth Street project that just got redone. So those are the 8 issuances we have with that. And then, so this gives us a debt service by fund breakdown, and this is the 8 issuances we have going until their final maturity in 2040. And it's split out by fund because just totals doesn't tell us a whole lot. What really matters is what our debt is looking like in each of the funds. So you can see there, the gray is the general fund, the blue is water, and green for sewer. And we have, you can see there, and the sewer debt falls off in 2024 as the last payment. So 2025, that frees up the sewer fund, which is really nice. I'll be meeting with Chris Swanson of Bolton and Menk here on Thursday. And he's the guy that's been doing our long-term facilities planning on the sewer and wastewater end of things. I know we have some facilities projects coming up. I just got to meet with him to really get an in-depth knowledge of what that's going to look like. That once I know what's coming up and what we're looking at long-term, then I can start to piece that into our long-term financial plan about this debt's falling off, but then when is the new debt going to come back on, and how are our rates going to need to look at when we're doing that, and what are we doing in the interim with that funding and adjusting rates accordingly. So I'll have more on that, but it's really good that about $350,000 per year of debt will be falling off after 2024. That'll really help because right now we're levying for the sewer fund because the sewer fund doesn't generate enough on its own. So as part of our general fund levy, we levy for the sewer fund, and then that goes in to cover the rest of it. And I think that's been happening for a handful of years now. So that's nothing new on that front, but that will free up. We won't have to levy for that, which will help with our general fund levy. And it'll help on the sewer end too, because the debt won't be there either. Then you can see on the water end of things that the 2006 PFA loan ends in 2026 with the last payment, and then it's just the 2021 that's in there. And then the general fund, the bulk of that being the fire hall as the new debt that has come on in that. So this is just, those were the 3 together. Now we just break them out each one by one. So this gives you an idea of what the general fund will be doing for the next 20-ish years, 18 years with the debt service that's on there. And this isn't to say that this is how this will stay for those years. As projects come on, we'll be figuring out debt service going into the future, but this is currently how it stands. This is the water fund broken out with that big final payment in 2026, and then it drops off. And we really don't have a lot of water projects in the pipeline for quite a long time. The stuff you guys did in 2020 took care of a lot of the CIP stuff in one go. And I was talking with Kyle about it. He says, yeah, we really don't have anything on the water end for quite a few years before we have to look at that again. So we're going to gain some freedom there on the debt service, which is going to help with rates. We won't have to keep increasing rates. That has been predicted once this falls off. So we'll gain that back. And then we can perhaps look at maybe some of the 2015 issuance and maybe something else where the water fund might be able to pick up some of the improvement portion of some of the non-fire debt on that to maybe help alleviate the general fund a little bit. Possibility, I'll get that figured out next year after we get the 2023 budget into the books and working on it. But that'll be something we definitely look at and get squared away when we start picking up budget for 2024. And I usually start budget in June with my city council. Then we look at the sewer end of things, and that just drops off completely. In talking with Kyle, just preliminarily, we're looking at potential, and I've talked with Maggie too on it. They were saying that they were looking at the sewer facilities projects coming on maybe 6, 7, 8 years when they were talking about, but I will certainly get that solidified with Chris, and I'm sure Chris has all that knowledge that I'll be looking for. So I'll be able to build that in on our long-term facilities plan to see where we'll be at with that.
Just a little history. I think eventually our goal is to not have to levy for our sewer. So that would be something that I'd be really interested in putting together more of that long-term plan. I know that there's some, I had a tour, like there's some improvements that can be done to the facility. And I think there's some upgrades that have to be done by meet certain standards
So
coming up. I don't remember the years, but I think there's some because when we were talking with New
Phosphorus stuff,
Germany,
all that, yeah.
and all that, like we would have to speed up some of those changes. So that's just one goal I think that the previous city councils have had, was to eventually not have to levy for sewer, and be able to have it all self-service based on usage.
I share that and agree 100%. All of the utility funds should be self-supporting. We shouldn't, the goal is that we don't have to levy for it. And I agree 100% we want to get there. And I think after 2024, I think we'll get there. And then it'll be the long term and seeing when we're going to plan on picking up potential future debt with the improvements that need to be made. The sewer fund is incredibly healthy. It's sitting on, when I looked at the balance sheet at the end of September, it was at about 2.3 million, which is usually you want to keep 50% of your future year's expenditures as reserves in the utility accounts. And if we're looking at in the sewer fund, $900,000 worth, and that's including debt, $900,000, you're going to want your sewer fund at approximately half that. So round up $500,000. And we're sitting at 2.3 million. And I know, in talking with Kyle, we've been putting that money away to buffer against the future facilities costs. So a chunk of that is meant to draw down the debt that we're going to have to incur so that we don't have a huge spike in the debt service once again. But once I know those figures further, I know we're looking at some PSIG dollars from the state, and maybe we need to make a run at some bonding dollars to help round that out. Once I have a better idea of that and talking with Chris, I can formulate future debt service, what that's going to look like. If I have a rough idea of what we're going to have to issue, I can build an amortization table for a 20 or 30-year debt schedule, and I can build that into this graph here and what that'll look like. And then I can put together what rate tables are going to need to look like to support that in the future for certain. So just a really quick, and I'm going to caveat this to all get out. So we've got the bond issuance on the left. We have the preliminary levy, which was passed here in September. And then we kind of have an updated one as I've been able to work on it. So the 2014A bond, I am 99% sure, and I'm working with Apple to finalize it. We do not need to levy for it. I pulled all the histories of levies on that, and I've looked at the debt service on it, and we have levied all the money in the correct years so that we should not have to levy that 155.
That makes sense, because when we said yes to the fire station, we did interest payment the first year, which would have been 2021.
Mhm.
And 2022 was the only year where we would have double the 2021A and the 2014A, and that bond would be dropped off in 2023. But I knew there was confusion when we had our interim, and that's not the interim's fault by any means, was just when was that ending. So this actually aligns with the thought process we had
What they were telling
when
us
we
all
were
along.
telling us that there
Yep.
was only 1 year that we would actually have that higher debt before it fell off.
I agree.
So I can confirm that.
We knew something wasn't matching up.
Right, but we
Yeah.
didn't know, and the interim did a fabulous job.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It was just there's a lot of details. But yeah, I feel like this is in line with what we originally discussed in 2020 when we actually approved the build of the fire station. And this was one of the main reasons why
Yep.
we approved it, because our debt, it would be like the same.
Mhm.
There was only 1 year of overlap. Okay, so that makes me feel better because that makes a lot more sense with when we were talking.
Yep, so that's exactly what you guys did, and that's the term you use is debt laddering, is what you call it. So as one comes off, you put another stack on the back end of it so that your debt is nice and uniform rather than doing it earlier or later where you have this vacillation in the debt. You're backing them up back to back. You had 1 year overlap, but that couldn't be. In a perfect world, you would have been able to wait 1 more year on that principal, so it's a nice smooth transition on the whole thing. But yeah, debt laddering is exactly what you guys did. I just got to work with Abdo because they've worked on the tax settlements and all of that. We just got to finalize a couple things. But I'm 99% sure we aren't going to need to levy that 155 because I checked all the levy resolutions for all the previous years, aligned them with the debt service schedule, and all the money's been levied. It's there. So we can cut that out. Some minor adjustments to the other ones, just with the debt service schedules and just getting them realigned on things. The sewer one, that one was levied as is. I'm putting together the utility fund budgets. That might change, it might not, depending on how we look at it, but I've got the number plugged in there with a bunch of asterisks, just saying we'll nail that down. And my goal is by second meeting in November, I've got general fund and the utility funds all put together
Great.
for final budgets. And then we would adopt it at that first meeting in December and then not have that second meeting, the day after Christmas. So yeah, that's what I got.
That was great. That was a great update.
I like this.
Yep.
I really do. I like PowerPoint. I like it's clean. It's clear. I understand it.
And now we have so much more flexibility now without that 155,000.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We've spent a lot of time with, and we have spent money because we didn't have in-house teams to be able to provide some of these capital improvement outlines, like the road project, things to really help us see upcoming debt
Mm-hmm.
and how to manage it, and that to keep our tax levy pretty flat without having to go up or down, even though we've had, and we're going into kind of a more unstable and, in economic environment that I think this is really helpful. I just know that the sewer plant, there is some upgrades that need to happen.
Yeah.
But if we have that fund balance, I think that was intentional to pay for some of these upgrades.
You're exactly right. That's why you're looking at 2.3 million. And when I pulled balance sheet, I looked at like 2.3 million. There's got to be a purpose for this. Nobody just has that kind of money sitting there for fun.
No, and I think we've been building it for a while, just knowing.
Ready for the expansions, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and when I moved here in '04, I remember I called the city because the tax rate was really high compared to neighboring cities. And it was because I feel like the city did a good job. It was a lot of money up front with less homes to cover. But now it's set us up for a really good future.
So in talking with Dave Martini, I had discussions with him on this, and he told me the back history on it as well is back in the early 2000s, us and a lot of other cities were expecting the big boom to happen with the housing.
Yeah.
So they issued this debt to upgrade all their facilities to make sure that they had the backbone all there for when that happened. And then when the mid 2000s hit and everything went south, we still had this debt sitting out there that we had to take care of. And that's, the population had to handle that.
Right.
And what Dave Martini says is now mayor is in a fantastic position
Mhm.
infrastructure
Which
wise.
side of it you got on? Now there's other communities who didn't put all the infrastructure in and now they're scrambling to get it in.
Exactly.
It's just, yeah.
So now we're hitting a nice period where the debt's falling off, so we're prepared for future growth.
Right.
It's there. The major infrastructure is there to handle future growth.
Yeah, and I think the councils that we've had are really big on making sure to not waste that time that people had to pay for so many things. You know, like I mean, like I said, I bought in 04, so I've been here 18 years and, you know, I was there paying for all this, but now it's really a benefit that I feel like we're in a really good, I think we're in a really good position no matter where we go, whatever the economy does. We have some.
We are.
Mhm.
Perfect. All right, anything more on that?
Nope, that is all I have
On
on
money? On money?
Yeah.
Just one question. Luann was working on a recovering sales tax from the purchases on the fire department. Did she leave any information for you on that?
She did. I haven't been able to finalize it yet.
Okay,
But yeah, I've
it's
seen
still
it. I know
alive. We're,
It's got to get taken care of.
okay.
It's on my radar for sure. So because taking advantage, because you need to apply for that sales tax, essentially a rebate. And I wish they would change the state law on it to just simply happen with the purchase, but that's not how it was set up. But then you have to apply for that sales tax rebate on it because the contractors buy it and they're not sales tax exempt. But then the city has a process to go in and say, this is for a city project, therefore give us our sales tax back.
Well, it seemed like it was a pretty decent number, whatever she had.
Yeah, it should, 20, 30.
It's not,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not as much as we thought because some things were already purchased
Still better than nothing.
in
Yeah.
tax, but yes, agreed. It's still better than nothing.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.